Good evening, everyone, and a warm welcome to the mentoring webinar by District 105. I know it's been a long day and people want to make it more longer. It's a wonderful day today, the Valentine's Day. So I wish all of you and your loved ones all the best. Dubai has had a very hectic day. I believe we've had 4 area contests. So well done to all the area teams and the members who were part of this wonderful contest. Now, coming to today, I think mentoring is something that we all are very familiar with. Some way or the other, all of us acknowledge that mentoring is a foundation of a strong club. If we have good mentoring culture, we always have clubs which are successful. We have members who have growth and we have members who succeed. So mentoring is something which is important. A mentor is someone who allows you to see the hope inside yourself. A quote by Oprah Winfrey. How true is that? Now we know all of this, but then there are questions. Why don't we have a wonderful mentoring culture in all our clubs around our district and maybe even outside our district? What is it that stops us from not having this wonderful mentoring program for all our members? We all know that a mentor can really help our growth. We all know that our success depends on somebody giving us that important feedback, those key moments. But then why don't we have mentoring in all our clubs? Now these are some of the questions we will be looking at. We'll be looking at more important questions: that what does a mentor do, what does a mentee need to do, and many other things, because we have a very qualified, experienced, and a passionate Toastmaster today who will share with us, some insights on mentoring. And of course, we have all of you here who also have a lot of ideas on mentoring. So we will also, let you ask questions and understand from you where are the issues, and we'll try and answer them. And we'll also have a few case studies after that. So to start with, let me introduce the speaker for tonight. And as you all know, distinguished Toastmaster Alleta Rochat is our regional 11 international director, and our region, has 9 districts. It includes District 20, 74, 79, 94, 104, 105, 114, 116, and 122. So that's the scope of her leadership. She handles so many districts. She is a professional speaker and a first certified world-class speaking coach. She is a master storyteller who captivates her audience as she shares practical strategies you can use right away. She is an author and she has written 2 books. Speak, Connect, Succeed is one of them. The Wedding Speaker's Guide is another one. She has spoken and trained in over 21 countries. Her clients include corporations, CEOs, TEDx speakers, and even professors. She also is a keen runner. Speed is not her forte, she believes that, and she lives in Cape Town. And so we have our speaker for tonight all the way from Cape Town to speak on mentoring. So over to the speaker tonight, distinguished Toastmaster, our Regional International Director, Alleta. Good evening, Alleta.
Good evening. Thank you very much, District Director Robin, and welcome to all of you. Gosh, what a day to be attending a webinar. I hope you are surrounded by love and perhaps some chocolate or something that puts a smile on your face. So thank you for making the time. As Robin said, there are always so many things competing for our time, and whether it's area contests or work or family time, I really honor the time that you've set aside for this webinar, and thank you very much for being part of it. Mentoring is, as Robin so correctly said, it's such a well-known concept, and yet somehow there's often a reluctance or a hesitation that stops people from taking the next step. I think part of it might be that sometimes we don't feel like we should be asking for a mentor because we think we should have it all figured out all by ourselves. Sometimes there's a perception that it's just too difficult. And in many clubs, I think the reason we don't have a very big mentoring program is because there's no system. And because we change club leadership all the time, everybody's learning their new role. And perhaps because we don't have a club officer called the mentoring club officer, that kind of gets left behind. So today we've got so much to share with you, and we're looking forward to answering many of your questions. But as you can see, we're looking at the opportunity, the benefits, and we're going to invite you to join a very, very special and exciting mentoring challenge. Next slide, please.
Yeah, Alicia.
Myths. There are some myths around mentoring, and I'm going to talk about a few of them that I've come across in my experience and give you a different answer to perhaps the one that comes to your mind automatically. We want to empower you to launch mentoring, and perhaps the word there should be a mentoring system in your club, which will make it easier for you to keep it up and running. We want to empower you to launch mentoring in your club so that you have a system that'll mean that it is launched properly and that it is sustainable and gives you the results you're looking for. And then also we want you to join our mentoring challenge. For me, it's very important that if I speak or train somewhere, I really want people to take action. It's one thing just hearing the theory, but it's an entirely different thing taking action on the subject matter. So my greatest wish is that you leave this webinar and you go to your club and you launch a mentoring program, or you relaunch it, or you improve the one you already have. So that, always think of action as we're going through everything tonight. Next slide, please. I wanted to share with you some of my personal experiences with mentoring, and maybe it'll ring true for some of you. Growing up, I really didn't ever have an official mentor. I had role models, but mentoring wasn't a thing in my life. And when I started my career, I was quite new in my company. And suddenly my boss approached me and said they've got a new person joining, and he was different for a number of reasons, and he needed support in the company. So they said to me, please, can I be his mentor? And when I look back on that, I kind of think their sentiment or their idea was a good one, but I had no support. I had no idea what I should be doing. And I think in many ways for them, it was a box ticking exercise. They had someone who needed support. They've allocated Alleta to be his mentor, but that was it. There was no support for the mentor or the mentee. There was no guidance. And that's what we don't want in our clubs. We want something a lot more structured with guidance, because the point of mentoring is that it's a personal growth journey, both for the mentor and for the mentee. So we need some guidance and guardrails and wisdom that goes along with it so that we can do it in a successful and a meaningful way. When I joined Toastmasters, my club didn't have an official mentoring program. We've got a lot better now. But very early on in my journey, I was invited to be a club mentor. And we're not going to be discussing being a club mentor tonight, but I can share with you that that was a challenge I took on as a relatively new Toastmaster. I hadn't even been a Toastmaster, I think, for 2 years at that point. But being a club mentor was an incredible opportunity. It forced me to learn quickly. It forced me to ask for advice. And it was probably one of the most enriching things I had taken on. Okay, let's go on to the benefits. Next slide, please. One of the primary benefits of having a mentor is that that mentor can give you a broader perspective. You often don't know what you don't know. And it's not because you are unintelligent, it's because you just haven't got that level of awareness. It's like when you first become a member, all you can see is your club, and you have no awareness that there's an area or a division or a district. So a mentor can certainly show you that bigger picture view and help you see things that you wouldn't otherwise see. And that awareness, it's an awareness of opportunity, it's awareness of accountability. Awareness is the first step to anything. When I took on my first district leadership role, and it was shortly after I think I'd been a Toastmaster just over 2 years, and I was elected as our district public relations officer. And little did I know how exciting that journey would be. That year, the international president, Pat Johnson, came to visit our district, and I planned her district, and I also traveled with her for about 10 days. And she was incredible. I mean, I didn't even know there was an international president before then. And suddenly I was exposed to her thinking, her experience in a 10-day period. And I emerged from that trip with so much more awareness, so much more knowledge that I couldn't possibly have gotten other way. Now, she wasn't my official mentor. She was a traveling companion, and she was a dignitary that I had to look after. But that was almost like an unofficial mentoring opportunity from which I benefited greatly. So that is what a mentor can do for you. And often our mentoring relationships aren't always formalized, but there's always an opportunity to learn from anyone. As a mentor, you grow by learning how to mentor someone else. It's a challenge because everybody's different. And that mentee is going to ask you some questions that perhaps you had never thought about before. So you have to go and look for the answer. And you have that mentoring experience. The mentee can also benefit tremendously from having you as a mentor. And your unique approach to that mentorship relationship and your commitment to it is what's going to make the difference. Being a mentor and being mentored are things that are so important in our careers. And many companies don't have a structured mentoring program. But with the knowledge you gain in Toastmasters, you can benefit from that and take that back to your career or anything that you're passionate about, a community group. That is a skill that I believe enriches lives, no matter where you are. And clubs, as Robin so correctly said, that have an active mentoring program inevitably have higher member retention because you're increasing the value that your members get at your club exponentially by having a structured mentoring program that they can benefit from. Next slide, please. These are some of the mentoring myths I've come across. The first is a very common one, that only experienced members can be mentors. In other words, you have to have been in Toastmasters for 5 years or whatever it is before you can be a mentor. That is really a missed opportunity because mentoring is about so much more than knowledge of the Toastmasters program. So a new member who's enthusiastic and who's committed can add value to another member who's perhaps slightly even newer. But your mentoring experience comes from beyond Toastmasters as well. So a new member who is experienced in IT, for instance, can help someone else overcome the technology barrier in pathways. So I'd like to challenge you to get as many people involved as mentoring as possible. I'll share a story with you. A few years ago, there was a guy who came to our club. His name was Tom, and he was terrified of public speaking. He had turned down promotions at work because they involved public speaking. So I mentored him through his first few assignments, and he was such a good speaker. He won Best Speaker of the Evening again and again and again, much to his surprise. He couldn't believe it. And then one day there was a lady who joined our club, and the VPE or the VP membership, I can't remember which one it was, asked her, is there anybody in the club that she would like to have as a mentor? And she said, I'd like Tom to be my mentor. And it gave me such pleasure to phone him because he didn't think he had much to give. He thought he was a terrible speaker, but he wasn't. And he was a relatively new Toastmaster. But she had identified him as somebody she wanted to mentor her. So keep your mind open and invite as many people as possible to be mentors and ask yourself, what can I learn from that person? And often you'll be surprised. Mentoring, there's a myth that it takes a lot of time. You agree the time commitment upfront from both sides. If you choose to spend 2 or 3 hours with your mentor or mentee, that's your choice, but it could take 20 minutes. It could take half an hour. It could be done virtually as opposed to face-to-face. So both of you have to agree the time commitment, and I don't believe it has to take an incredible amount of time. You define that and you control that. There's a myth that mentoring is a long-term relationship. Please don't think that you have to marry your mentor. It certainly isn't a long-term relationship. You agree the time span at the outset. As an international director on the board, I was assigned 2 mentors. One was a second-year international director, and another one was the executive committee member. And they mix those mentors up after 6 months. So coming March at our next board meeting, I will be assigned 2 different mentors. I really believe at club level, you can do a month mentoring, a 6-week mentoring. It doesn't have to be a year-long commitment. So define it and agree it up front. I think it's more doable if it's shorter periods of time, and then you take a break and then you have another mentor, and then you take a break and you have another mentor. I think you get far more out of it than having a protracted relationship that perhaps isn't serving either of you. Next slide, please. So the mistakes I see people making with regard to mentoring, and that is thinking that if I am the mentee, I want a mentor, but I only want that mentor to tell me how wonderful I am. I only want them to be a cheerleader and applaud loudly and just keep telling me, wow, I'm so amazed, well done. You can have a mentor like that, but you are going to be missing out on so much learning. And part of that is that often you want to learn, and a cheerleader is fine, they might make you feel good, but that they're not going to help you grow. So if someone approaches me and asks me to be their mentor, the first thing I say to them is, tell me what specific area of your speaking or your leadership you want mentorship on. I want them to define it so that I know what they're looking for and I can address that.
Anita, your sound is again broken away. Just repeat after the cheerleader part. Can you just
period for the
repeat?
mentoring? Okay, just wait. There we go. Another mistake I see people making is having an indefinite time period for the mentoring. It's too long, and because it's too long, there are no specific goals, and it kind of sometimes peters out to nothing. So I am a great believer in short-term mentoring, very specific, goals agreed, timing agreed, feedback mechanism agreed. And that's the next point. You need to give one another feedback. Because it's a learning experience for both the mentor and the mentee, you both have to share what you learned from it and perhaps what was missing, because that is the way we both grow. It's not a one-sided relationship that all the wisdom comes from the mentor and goes to the mentee. The mentee can also help the mentor be aware of what worked, what they really appreciated, and perhaps what they would have liked more of. So make sure you build in feedback mechanism. And the last one is not being committed. And in other words, you say you want a mentor, but then you never set aside time for your mentor, or you cancel meetings and you're too busy, and you never actually commit to being accountable for what you said you would do and for being accountable to receive the feedback as well. So it's a business transaction, being a mentor and having a mentor. And the more defined it is, the greater your chance of success. Okay. Now I'd like to hand back to District Director Robin and ask him to introduce the people who'll be sharing their success stories.
Thank you, Aleta. It was a very, very insightful presentation. Of course, as we had decided, the idea of mentoring is also to know from all of you what are the questions you have, and also to share some case studies. Now we have two people here among us who will share, their club success stories in terms of mentoring. And the first of the case studies will be from a club in Muscat, which is called Kimji Toastmaster Club. Just to highlight to you, this club was the best club from Oman last year. It won the award for the best club for its members, and presently it has 65 members, and it has a lot of the senior Toastmasters from Oman, who are the division directors, distinguished Toastmasters coming from this club. It's called Kimji Toastmasters Club, and from there we have a senior Toastmaster, distinguished Toastmaster Sri Raman Vaidyar, who is online. So we will put him online now, and he will, share with us his, success story in terms of the mentoring culture in his club. So we will now hear from Sri Raman Vaidyar. Sri Raman, I'm going to put you online. Yes, Toastmaster Sriram, you're online. You can unmute yourself and you can speak. Okay, we'll go to the next presenter and then come back to him. We have the next presenter who is from TGIS Club in Dubai. Now, it is also one of the popular clubs in Dubai, an extremely successful club. And like Kimji Toastmaster Club, they won the best club for a member award last year. And we have a very senior Toastmaster from there, Toastmaster Alexander, among us. So we will now hear from Toastmaster Alexander.
I see
Hi, Robin.
Sri
Do you want
Raman
me to
is.
go online now?
Oh yeah, I think we have Sri Raman online. So yes, Sri Raman, you can please speak. Yes, we'll go back to Alexander after that. Yes, Sri Raman from
Thank you,
Kimji
Robin,
Toast.
and thank you, DTM Alleta. That's whatever you have presented so far has been very insightful. And happy Valentine's to all of you. In KMG Toastmasters, we had a very great culture of mentoring set out by our founder president and founder vice president education, who were known as the club making machines, George Thomas and Shikumar Pai. And it was continued by one of our other pioneer Toastmasters called Nanan Thomas. So I had pretty much everything on the plate available. So did the members. So what we do is one of the things that we got to know recently in one of the talks by our past president DTM Murad, was in past international president DTM Murad, was there was this question as to whether the mentor chooses the mentee or the mentee chooses the mentor. I think one of the strongest things that happens in our clubs is that the mentee expresses a desire that he or she wants to be mentored by a particular Toastmaster. And again, going back to DTM Alleta's presentation, we generally don't stick to the fact that only seniors have to mentor the juniors. So I have been lucky that I could learn from a 50-year-old as well as a 19-year-old. A member who had got out of college and with a brilliant analytical skills actually told me how I should trust my abilities and present my own version of things when I choose to be a Toastmaster of the day or when I take my own speeches instead of depending on borrowed quotes or material. That was a revelation for me. Somebody trusted my abilities. Somebody as young as 19 or 20-year-old trusted my abilities. He saw something in me and he pointed out to me. Whereas I've been fretting, thinking of bringing things from outside, from people, from various resources and presenting. It's just that he made me aware that I have got something that I could present. And this is exactly what I try to do when I mentor people. I ask them what their areas of expertise are and what they would like to do. Initially, to set up that purpose is very correct, and I agree quite rightly with DTM Alleta that we don't have to marry the mentees. It's not a long-term business. We are just there to help them. And one of the success stories, and I would like to name that person, is a gentleman called Navnita Krishnan. Now, I started as a mentor, but now I find it difficult to mentor him. He's grown by leaps and bounds now. Today, he's my pathways guide. I learned quite a lot from him in terms of drive and effectiveness in getting things done. So this is one thing I've learned, that there is so much more to learn from people around you. Just
Thank you so
because
much,
you're a mentor.
Sri Raman. Thank you so much. I think we will also now, have a few others speak. Thank you so much, Sri Raman. We have the past district director Balaji among us, so we will request him to
Thank you.
share a few insights on his experience in his club, and then we'll try and go back to Alexander. Somehow we are not able to bring him online. Let me just check if we can make Balaji the presenter. Yes, Balaji, you are online. You can speak now.
Hi, Robin. Can you hear me now?
Yes, DTM Balaji, we can hear you.
Thank you. DTM Alleta, good evening and a very, very happy Valentine Day to you.
Thank you.
Fantastic to be on this webinar. It's great that 105 is having such sessions. I do not wish to waste much time. I want to go straight into my experience into corporate clubs, especially in this part of the world. A lot of people feel that corporate clubs are started by one lone individual who probably wants his or her company to be on the map, and after a year or two, the clubs fizzle down. I think the main reason for that is, first of all, there is no management support. Somebody in the group would have just started it. So for me, I feel the most important thing is to get the management, the top management blessings, number one. Number two is definitely mentoring, because in corporate entities, what happens is, because you see them from morning till evening and you're working with them, a lot of people would not like to sit with you and listen to you. So the best thing which I have done in a company which is called TriStar, and we now the club is now 8 years old. What I've done is selected a few people who are quite good and who wish to improve, and instead of having mentors from within the club, because they see us day in and day out, and especially somebody, me as a management person, some people would not come and sit with me. So I've selected some external mentors to come into the club to coach those people who really want to come forward. And these are the people who have maintained a relation. And just recently, I was checking with one of them as to when is our club contest, and they told me it's just around a week away from now. And I said, "Are you guys getting ready for your speech contest?" One of these guys came up to me and said, "You told me about a mentor, and for the last 1 year, we are really good friends, and a lot of things are happening between us. He's actually coaching me for the contest speech which is coming up." So with that, what has happened is we have a strong 15 to 20 people who are now dedicated to TriStar Toastmasters. People come in and people go, because in corporate entities, sometimes you get transfers, sometimes you lose your job because of difficult periods, and sometimes your work toll, and many times your work toll takes away, so that you are not ready to attend these meetings. So you always need to establish that 15 or 20 people, and that can be done by using some really good mentors from outside. Thank you, Robin.
Thank you, Balaji, for all your insightful words. Now we will try and see if Alexander Thomas can be brought online. Just see. Toastmaster Alexander, you can please unmute yourself and try and speak. Yes,
Hi,
he's
hi.
online.
Yeah, good evening, DTM Robin and DTM Alleta. Pleasure to be online. Uh, I just wanted to share a couple of experiences that I've had with TGIS. And while DTM Alleta, what you mentioned about mentoring, and there is a myth that you have to be old in the organization. I totally agree that in TGIS, what happens is, you could have somebody who's 20, 21, and what is happening in TGIS is something which is amazing in terms that it is not a single member-centric, single mentor-centric club. Now the mentoring culture has come across actually like a wildfire. and it no longer depends upon, like in many of the clubs that I go as a G and see that there is a person who's 10 years in the organization, 12 years, and if that person moves out for 2 months, a club goes down. In TJS, I find the number of people who have come to that level, it's really beautiful to see a 40-year-old guy getting mentored by somebody who's 20, 21, 22, and the relationship is so beautiful. And whatever you mentioned in your presentation, it seems to be taking place, and it's more like a tree, with the young leaves sort of being protected, cared for, and nurtured by the branches and the tree. And the senior Toastmasters are always there, and there are times when you need to refresh yourself too. Mentoring, you cannot mentor from a empty cup. So those people are always there, and that's a beauty which I find is keeping it in high state. I also see from some of the other clubs, they ask me, very senior Toastmaster, they say, what is it that you do in TGIS in terms of mentoring? And sometimes you don't realize how awesome your club is till somebody externally comes and tells you about it. So I just thought I'll just share this particular thing. Over to you, DTM Robin.
Thank you so much, Toastmaster Alex. It was very, very nice for you to share the insights on TGIS Club. Now, we also have our Club Goat director with us, so we will hear from him because he has some rich experience to share. DTM Gurvinder, you can just unmute yourself and just share your experience on mentoring.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Good evening, DTM Robin, DTM Alleta, and everybody from District 105. My experience with mentoring would go as long as when I joined and started the first club in Oman, which was almost 13, 14 years ago. And that was a time when we had no other club in Oman, except perhaps one club somewhere. So I was absolutely unaware of how to start or run a club, and I was the VP Education at the chartering time. Through my good luck, we had a lot of senior Toastmasters who had been from various other clubs earlier, and they were still going around. They were still in Oman, but they were not members of any club. And I just reached out to them. For the next 2 years, for every meeting, I had one or two Toastmasters coming in and mentoring us on the nuances, on the protocols. And it worked so well for us that 13 years later, 14 years later, our club, that corporate club, is going strong. We have 4 DTMs, so 5th one in the making. And we are so happy that the mentors from all over the country always extended their help to us, no matter how new or how small we were. So for me, I'm a firm believer in mentoring, and I try to carry it forward everywhere. The second aspect that I would also share with all of you is it's also important for mentors to create more mentors. And that's what I've been doing in the last few years, is that many Toastmasters come to me for mentoring on becoming effective speakers or effective leaders within their domain in the clubs or areas and divisions. And at some point, I do that work. And then now I started to ask them to work with another set of people and mentor them. That is working wonders for those people as well, because they find huge success in their career development, in their ability to mentor people, not only in Toastmasters, but in their organizations, which is noticed, and they experience professional growth. So I think mentoring is a beautiful tool within Toastmasters, and it works both in Toastmasters as well as out of Toastmasters. Thank you.
Thank you, DTM Gurbinder, for those wonderful words. DTM Alleta, now I think we will get into questions because we've had quite a few people sharing their wonderful experience on mentoring, and I think we have got a lot of insights, but there are still a lot of questions to be answered. So are we
Yes.
ready for the questions?
Yes. Do you want people to put them in the chat, or how?
I can see I will just read it out to you. and you
Okay.
can choose to answer it. And if anybody else wants to highlight any other aspect, we'll bring them online. But primarily, it will be addressed to you, and we'll
Okay.
try and see if we need to, get somebody else also to add a few points if required. So we have a few questions already online. I will just share one of them with you now. Okay, now this is a question. This comes from one of the Toastmasters. Yes, this is Anil Warang from St. Mary's Toastmaster Club. Now he says, how to motivate. The first one is, what makes a successful mentor-mentee partnership? That's the first question. I'll just read out two questions, and then you can try and do it together, because he has three, but I don't think we can do three for one person, so we'll do two questions. The second one says, how to motivate mentees to share their projects in advance prior to their presentation without seeming to be too pushy. So these are two things which are probably connected to the mentor-mentee relationship. So this is a question from him. Aleta, you can answer the question. Hello, Aleta, can you hear me? I think there is some audio problem. So what we will do is we have some very senior Toastmaster among us. So we'll try and take the questions, and we'll try and see if some of us can answer these questions. And once Aleta comes back online, then we will try.
Hello.
Yes, I think Aleta is back online. Aleta,
Yeah.
did you hear the question, or do you want me to repeat it for you?
I heard the what makes a successful mentor-mentee partnership, and how do you
Yes,
motivate the
yes,
mentee?
that's
Okay,
the
thank you.
question. Yeah,
Sorry about the audio being an issue. I
no
think
problem.
to have a successful mentor-mentee partnership, there has to be a mutual commitment and a mutual respect. It's one thing to ask someone to be your mentor, but then there's an expectation that you as the mentee will bring your part of the agreement, and you will honor your accountability for that partnership. In other words, you agree up front what you're going to do, you show up for meetings or calls, and you do the work. It's very disrespectful to ask someone to help you and then not show up, or think that you can just have an agreement in place but not do any of the work. So I think it's honoring the commitment, and it's holding one another to account. Equally frustrating is someone who asks someone to mentor them and the mentor is never available, or it's available once but never again. So I think that's why I'm in favor of short-term mentoring agreements, because then if it's not working, and let's face it, sometimes life does get in the way, but then even if you can't make a meeting, you let the other person know well in advance. And if life gets super crazy for you, then rather step back and let someone else step in. But don't take each other for granted, and be very, very grateful that that person is giving their time that they can never get back to help you succeed and to help you grow, irrespective of whether you are the mentor or the mentee. It's very important just to honor that commitment and to be accountable to one another. How can you motivate mentees to share in advance? I think that's part of the agreement right up front. If someone comes to me and asks me to be their mentor, then I'm going to say, okay, what do you want to be mentored on? How long are we doing this for? And this is what I need from you. So it's an agreement. It's not just giving someone a badge and saying, okay, now you've got the badge. That's all there is to it. It's a partnership. It's a working partnership. And I think also there's a level of accountability to the club. It's no use the club going to all this trouble of putting a system in place and then the people involved not honoring that system. So I think be very upfront, and if it's not working, then you've got to shine a light on the fact that it's not working and specify why, and find out how you can come to an agreement to change what's not working.
Fantastic. I think it's very clear that managing expectations by having an agreement is the answer to this mentor-mentee relationship. So very well said. And now we have another question. Now this is from one of our senior Toastmasters. Now she is no longer in our district, but she's still an active Toastmaster. This is from Jyotika Shetty, all the way from Mangalore. She says, if a new member can be a mentor, then what is the objective of Pathways mentoring program? I'll repeat the question again. If a new member can be a mentor, then what is the objective of Pathways mentoring program?
I think they are two separate things. In other words, in the Pathways mentoring program, there's certain tasks that they want you to do, there's certain experiences they want you to have. But I think that mentoring is far more than just about Pathways or about Toastmasters. It can be mentoring, speaking, it can be mentoring. The mentoring relationship to me is so broad. And one thing I've learned is that if someone mentors me, I often learn things I don't expect to learn from them because they have a life experience that I don't even know about. So I like to think of mentoring as an incredibly broad subject. One part of that is mentoring you.
Aleta, we sometimes are losing you, so I think we just didn't hear the last sentence.
Can you hear me? Yeah, okay. The mentoring agreement for me and the mentoring experience is far broader than just Pathways or just Toastmasters. It's life mentoring as well. Because inevitably, if somebody is mentoring me, they're bringing their life experience to the relationship, and I have no clue what their experience is and what they're good at and what wisdom they've got to share. My job as a mentee is to be open and to say to myself, what can I learn from this person? And if you go in with that attitude, it's less of an issue if they're not experienced in Pathways, because there'll be somebody else in your club who is, and you can draw on that person for the Pathways information that you need, but there is so much more on offer in a mentoring relationship.
I think very well said. Again, I think like we all understand that, we may be starting out in Toastmasters, but we have our life experience, we have our professional experience, and we have all our personal journeys to share, which can always help, somebody who is a mentee or a mentor. So I think it's more about the broad experience that we bring to the table. So I think very well said, and I think it's answered that question. Now we'll go to some more interesting questions. Some of the questions came by email. Now this is an interesting one. It says, how does one overcome mentoring fatigue, where you feel too spent to give more? How does a mentor keep her battery recharged?
That's a wonderful question. First of all, don't agree to mentor the whole world. I really think you've got to be very selective in terms of how many mentees you take on, because you can't do them all justice. And as you rightly say, if you are giving and giving and giving, you've got nothing left to give. And one of the big tests of leadership is to make sure that you look after yourself and that you recharge your own batteries, and so that you are inspired and are in a position to give to other people. And if you are always on the giving and never receiving, there's an imbalance there. So the first thing I would suggest is take a break from mentoring and get a mentor yourself. Be on the receiving end for a change, and just absorb and partner with people. Or, I'm a big one for listening to podcasts, but I'm very selective as to what I listen to, because it's got to leave me more inspired than when I've started listening to the podcast. You have to look after yourself as a leader, and taking on too many mentees is not looking after yourself. So sometimes you need to be selfish to be sustainable as a leader. And by selfish, I mean you've got to practice self-care.
Fantastic. I think it's important to say no and know your limits. And also, it's important to be mentored and not just be a mentor. So wonderful answer. Now we have, many more interesting questions. This is from Toastmaster Sadgopan Narayana Sami. And he says, it says, 1 minute, I'll just try to read it correctly. As a mentee is afraid of being judged by the mentor. How do I overcome this fear? Now, this is a very real question. As a mentee is afraid of being judged by a mentor. So how do I overcome this fear?
I can relate to that question. I often share that I was more nervous for my first evaluation in a Toastmasters club than I was for giving the speech, because for me to be evaluated in front of an audience just seemed terrifying. But I was very fortunate. I had a very skilled evaluator who, as we all know, if you do it properly, you build the person up even while you are giving them advice and encouragement and suggestions to improve. I think that's part of the setting the tone of the relationship. If you are intimidated by your mentor, perhaps that's not the right mentor for you. Perhaps you need to choose someone that you can relate to and that is less intimidating for you. There has to be a chemistry between the two. That's why I believe there has to be an element of choice. I would fare better if I had a choice. If somebody in my club said to me, we have a pool of mentors, these are the 3 or 4 people, which one would you like to be your mentor? That is more valuable to me than being assigned to someone that I have no relationship with or no connection with. So I would encourage you to choose a mentor that doesn't intimidate you, and then be honest and say, I don't want to feel I'm being judged. I want advice that'll help me grow. And so often, if we shine a light on the issue, we can deal with it. But if you never express that out loud, then often the person is oblivious to the fact that perhaps they are being intimidating. They don't mean to be, but perhaps it's something they're doing unconsciously.
Fantastic. I think these are very, very important insights that we need to implement in our clubs. And also, I think the choice also should be with the mentor. Once he's assigned a mentee, is he okay with that? Because it's not just a choice of mentee choosing a mentor. It's also mentor agreeing to mentor that particular mentee. So there has to be a mutual consent and understanding. So I think wonderful.
Very
Now
good
we have
point.
another question, Aleta. This is from one of our Toastmasters all the way from Abu Dhabi. Her name is Archana. She says, for a young club with not so many senior Toastmasters, how would you ignite the mentoring spirit within its members?
Okay, I'm going to jump ahead a little bit in this presentation. I think first of all, you've got to get buy-in from your club. I think if I've said to District Director Robin that this presentation that we're doing tonight is available to anybody who would like to take it to their club and present that and get buy-in. So everybody says, okay, we're going to join the mentoring challenge, which is going to be a 6-week challenge. And one of the key things that I've seen work at clubs is where they have, as in every single meeting, a 2 to 3 minute mentoring moment, where somebody in the club, either a mentor or a mentee, stands up and for 2 to 3 minutes shares the benefit they've got out of that relationship. And that's a wonderful way to remind one another of the benefits, to share the benefits, and from both sides. If a mentor shares how they've grown or learned or enjoyed being a mentor, that encourages other people to sign up. If the mentee says how he or she has benefited, it also encourages more people to sign up to be mentored. So I think you've just got to keep speaking about it, keep sharing. One of the divisions in my home district many years ago, one of the ladies who was division director at the time was so passionate about mentoring that she organized an event called a Mentoring Magic event. And they'd had mentoring in place for a number of months, and they had a celebration evening to celebrate and honor both the mentors and the mentees, and they shared all their success stories. So I think if you are excited about it and you get everybody else to buy in and you keep sharing the success stories, that's a major, major step forward. So be unafraid, even if you're a new club, with the toolkit that we're going to make available to you, there'll be a system that you could use. There's guidance. Members of your PQD team are going to be available in District 105 to guide you. So there's help every step of the way. So my encouragement is just to get going.
Fantastic. I think 2 points you made are amazing about mentoring moments. I think we can easily spare 5 minutes in every session, or maybe every 1 month, one session where people can share their experiences. Wonderful. And of course, an event where we honor and acknowledge some of the achievements and success stories of mentor mentees is again something wonderful. A division outside has done it. I'm sure we can also try and do that. So wonderful. Now we have a lot of questions coming in. I will just go to one more question. Now this is by some of our experienced Toastmasters. So one of them is from the past district director who also spoke earlier, DTM Balaji. He has put up a very interesting question. It says, in the fast-paced world in fast-paced world, mentoring has taken a backseat, and DCP, Distinguished Club Program, has taken over in clubs. And in the online world of pathways, most of the people say, I already know it. What can be done? So
I would, part of the reason we've referred to this as a mentoring challenge is that we're challenging you to try perhaps something different, and we're challenging you to give it a go. And it's fine to think you know everything, and we all are. I mean, all of us do at some point in time think we've been there, done that, ticked off. We're not going to go there again. But I challenge you to do it differently, to set it up differently, and to see the results. And if we all go into this partnership and this challenge and think, how can I enrich somebody else's life by being a mentor? What can I give, both as a mentee and a mentor? Let's shake it up a little bit and just see what comes from this. And I think I would be astounded if nothing good comes out of it. I think all of us are going to be blown away by how positive it is and how our clubs benefit. So let's just take a step back, take a deep breath and say, come on, let's give this a try. We've got nothing to lose and we've got everything to gain, and let's share our success stories and compare notes a few weeks from now.
I think it's a very valid point, because I think a lot of work is already happening. It's just that we are not shining light on some of the relationships and some of the success stories which are happening across the clubs, because all these successful clubs are not becoming successful just by magic. There is a lot of senior Toastmasters, leaders who are working without any titles and who are really, really helping some of the members, present their speeches, go for leadership roles. So a lot of work is happening. It's just that we are not really shining light on it, because if we do that, we can also encourage some of the other clubs who don't have the luxury of having these senior leaders. And of course, just one more thing, we have 300 plus distinguished Toastmasters in our district. I will be sharing the list with all the area leaders shortly. So you will have a lot of these senior Toastmasters available. You can approach them, and if you have some of the young clubs who don't have senior Toastmasters, can always approach them, because I have never seen any distinguished Toastmaster or a senior Toastmaster refusing to mentor clubs or members. So I think we have a lot of help available, and as Alleta said, let's give it a go. Let's take up this challenge, and let's see if we can establish a mentoring culture in our clubs, and at least we can start out, and in the next 6 weeks, let's see what we can do. A few more questions, Alleta, and then we'll go to the some of the important aspects of how to go forward from here. So we have a question which is from Biju Verma. He says, how to manage the conflict of interest if a mentor reviewing a mentee's speech preparation is also a speaker for the same meeting?
That's a very interesting question. I'm not sure what that conflict would be, unless they're very competitive and they both want to win best speaker.
Yeah, I think that is one of them. And then secondly, yeah, I think it's basically about that, will the mentor give it his best? Because, if he really coaches or mentors the mentee too well, he may win. I mean, that's what you rightly said, maybe the best speaker award is what he's mentioning about.
Yeah, and I think we've got to understand that in an ideal mentor-mentoring relationship, the mentor would want the mentee to shine. I mean, I know that in my club, I have, there's one very experienced Toastmaster, John, and he's a superb speaker, but he takes such pride when someone he's mentored does well, wins a club contest, goes on to area. He always says, I mentored that guy. I'm so proud of him. So I don't think either of them have to lose anything if one wins and the other one doesn't. The mentee can also say, gosh, that's my mentor. Look how cool he is. He's such a good speaker. So I think delighting in one another's strengths rather than being threatened by them is perhaps the attitude we're trying to encourage.
And I think also, Aleta, I think whoever has been a mentor understands that the value and satisfaction you get by mentoring somebody and being and experiencing elation in somebody else's success cannot be matched by your own success. So I think if you are
Yeah,
at
well
heart
said.
a mentor, at heart a mentor, I don't think this is a conflict of interest at all, because I think you would rather have your mentee win any day, because I think that's much more I mean satisfactory than you winning. So I think that's why we
Exactly.
are in Toastmasters. So I think that's answered now. There is another interesting question which says I think this is to do with how we had given one of the insights, which says if we have to choose a mentor, then there'll be several mentors having many mentees. And few minutes ago, you mentioned mentors should not have many mentees. Isn't it correct for XCOM to choose the mentor for a new mentee? Now, this is exactly I think we are trying to get at. So I think it's the right question to answer. I think Aleta, you would like to shed
Mm.
light on this.
Yes, I don't think there's any one right or wrong answer. It's a very good point that some people in the club will attract more people because they want to be mentored by that person. So that can happen. But then I think you've just got to be honest and say, well, that person isn't available now. They will be available um, a, a month or 6 weeks from now. That's a very acceptable response. Or you can say, these are the people who are available now, and explain that it's not a lifetime commitment and that you swap mentors every now and again. And as Robin, as you've pointed out, you can always get mentors from other clubs or from in your district. There's so many people who would welcome the opportunity to mentor someone. So cast your net wide. Don't think that your mentor only has to be from your club. If you haven't got enough people, reach out to other people who I'm sure would be delighted to help.
Yeah, I think I would like to just add to what you just said, Alita. I think it's also important to understand that a mentor-mentee relationship is something which is like Alita put it very rightly. It's an agreement where you put up very clearly the expectations, but then it has to be facilitated by the XCOM. There is no doubt about it, because you are the 7 people who are running the clubs, and unless you take onus to ensure that there is an environment where a mentor and mentee relationship can be initiated, because for a new member, he himself doesn't have the understanding of who are the people who are available to be mentors, who have the experience. You need to facilitate this, and as the XCOM the option of having members from outside mentoring your members, again it's the onus on the XCOM, because they know more about who are the senior people available outside. And if it's an experienced member, then of course he can go himself and choose a mentor. But for a new mentee, definitely it is the role of the XCOM to facilitate that, but again after an agreement that both should be agreeing to that. So I think that's how it goes. Now we have a few more questions, and then we will just go to it, because I think by these questions we have had a lot of clarity on what we want to achieve. Now we'll just go back to one more question. 1 minute. This is a very, again, a fundamental question. This is by distinguished Toastmaster Gurvinder Singh Pun, who's the Club Growth Director. He says, how do we differentiate between coaching and mentoring?
Mm-hmm. That's a really tough question. I think to me, it's almost like they're two sides of the same coin. It's very, very closely linked. Coaching, often you ask questions more than you give advice, and you get the person being coached to come to their own conclusion through the process that you take them through. Mentoring might be more direct, where you give them specific instructions or advice or direction. But I think often we blend between the two. And for me, the most important thing is the mindset and the heart you bring to the mentoring relationship, more than the technicality of whether it's mentoring or coaching. I believe that a mentor should want the mentee to succeed beyond their wildest expectations, and the mentee should be wanting to be a sponge and just learn as much as possible from the mentor, even if it's not what they originally thought they'd learn. Often your most profound learning comes as a surprise. But that attitude of being teachable and a humbleness on both sides, that the one isn't better than the other. You're in a partnership to help one another grow. And I think if you both go in with that attitude and that heart, then whether you're being coached or mentored, you'll still both get value out of it.
Yeah, I think I want to just highlight one more aspect now. In terms of Toastmasters, there is a clear distinction. Coaches are people who are allotted to clubs who are, not doing well, who have members of 12 or less. So from that, perspective, we can say coaches are people who come with a very definite, objective of helping a club, become a better club, a healthier club. So coach has a very, very clear role. He has a very clear objective. And on the other side, mentors, especially the individual mentors, have a clear role of working with the individual members. So let's put that distinction right now. And then, as Aleta said, it's a matter of working with a mentor, and it's just right now two different names to a similar kind of role. But in terms of coaching, let's look at coaches who have a definite role of helping a club becoming a better club. And then, of course, we can have more distinctions, but I think this is what is very easy to fathom. Now
Yeah,
we'll
and I
go
think
to a yes.
if we
Aleta,
just
yeah.
remember the terms, if we want to talk about a club coach or a club mentor, then we need to use those terms because it is confusing because we've got individual mentors, and you can, not in Toastmasters, but in the rest of the world, you can have an individual coach. So it's all good stuff, but as you say, there are very specific distinctions between them.
Okay, now there is another question. Now, this is, I think, another important question, which says, how do we gauge the success of a mentor-mentee relationship? What can be the parameters?
I think it's how each individual perceives the learning and the growth that has come as a result of that partnership. As a mentee, if I would have to kind of measure the success of a relationship with a mentor, it would be, what did I learn? How am I different now than before? What am I aware of that I wasn't aware of before? What can I do now that I couldn't do before? Or what can I see now that I couldn't see before? From a mentor perspective, I think I would view my success, it would entirely be whether the mentee has felt that that relationship has been worthwhile and that person has grown and developed. And from a personal perspective, it would be, what have I learned out of the relationship? And what have I learned that I could put into practice when I have another person to mentor? How have I grown as a mentor? How has my ability to enrich that person's experience grown? So for me, it's all outcomes based.
Yeah, and I think, like you rightly said, when you have an agreement in place, you could also, go a little ahead and maybe put a few, objectives or goals that you would like to achieve as a team, because mentor-mentee are a team finally. So if they want to achieve certain things, which, could be some personal goals of a mentee, like he would like to work on his ability or voice modulation, for example, that could be one goal. In 6 months' time, he would like to work on improving his voice modulation. So you could put down some 4 or 5 things and give it a finite term and then work on it. So that depends on the comfort level of the mentor and mentee, if they are okay doing that. But otherwise, qualitative parameters is, I think, easier to do that. Hello, Aleta, are you there? I think we have lost her. Aleta, can you hear me? Hello? Aleta, we seem to have lost you. Hello? Okay, we have a few more suggestions coming in till she, I think, joins back. Something
I'm
interesting.
back. Sorry,
Okay,
I've lost
fantastic.
audio for a while.
No problem. There is something interesting suggestions coming in. Why can't we work on an agreement, a formal agreement between a mentor and mentee? Now, before you answer, I can just say there are some documents available, which is an official mentor assignment, a mentee assignment, and there are some official documents which TMI has made available. So we'll be sharing all that. This Aleta will elaborate a little further on the mentoring toolkit in the end, so that it will give you a lot of access to more resources which you can use to set up this process. So would you like to add anything, Aleta, to this? I mean, it's an interesting
I
suggestion
think
about the.
yes, I think that's very good advice. In the toolkit, you will find documents that where mentors can accept an assignment and when you can allocate mentors to a mentee. And some of the detail we've been talking about will be in those documents, but feel free to add to that. For me, the big things are, what is the outcome you're looking for? How will you know this is successful? And be specific about what areas you're looking for input on. And how often are you going to meet? And what has to be done? In other words, if you're going to be working on one of your assignments, when are you going to meet? When is it going to be presented? An agreement, on those kind of steps that you're taking will be so useful. So I don't think it needs to, because mentoring can be so multifaceted, the agreement will very much be determined by what the mentee specifically wants to get out of it. So hone in on those areas, agree the timing, agree the meeting points or touch points, and any preparation, and then schedule feedback as well.
Okay. I think fantastic. Now I think we'll just take last two questions and then we'll head to the last slide, which is the most important slide for today, which is where we have a plan of action on how to take this forward. Now there is another question, which is an interesting question, which is, what has been your experience or learnings that you feel are deal breakers when you are involved in mentoring across different cultures?
That is a fascinating question. I think that very much speaks to the two individuals involved. Sometimes people have a capacity for diversity and other people have no capacity for diversity. So I think that there needs to be a bit of honesty on both sides. If you are uncomfortable for whatever reason, whether it's a gender issue, whether it's a culture issue, whether it's a nationality issue, be honest up front, because you can't paper over the cracks. If that is, it's only a deal breaker for the people involved. So if something is way out of your comfort zone, then say so and don't go there. And I'm not assessing blame or judgment in that statement. I'm just saying all of us have certain tolerances for certain things, and we need to be true to ourselves. So don't put people in a position that is untenable for them. Then rather try and match them with someone else who's perhaps less diverse or different to them, so that the relationship can be a success. From the club viewpoint, you want these mentoring partnerships to succeed. From an individual viewpoint, you want them to succeed. So set them up for success. And if you can see red lights flashing, change it. And just make sure that both of them can walk out of that relationship with something positive. And if they hit a crisis, make sure they know who to call to discuss it.
Okay, I think this cultural diversity thing is something important, especially in our district where we have members from so many countries who are members. But then I think, as they say, you need to choose the mentors carefully, and of course the mentors need to choose mentees carefully, that you are having some kind of a chemistry and you can work with each other. And like we say, some people have cultural quotient, cultural intelligence, and some have less of it, who are not exposed to it. So we need to just pick and choose people who are comfortable and who can adapt to a different culture. So I think that's something that we need to work on. Now, there's another very interesting question. I think one of the last questions we'll take, which is, what has been your experience of virtual mentoring? Any key takeaways or do's and don'ts that you feel will enhance the virtual mentoring relationship? Now, this is important because there are some countries like, we have Jordan and Lebanon where, there are not as many experienced Toastmasters. I wouldn't say Jordan because I think Jordan has a lot of them, probably Lebanon, who are, an upcoming country who have only few clubs. So how can we, what are the parameters for a virtual mentoring relationship?
The experience I've had with virtual mentoring is that it works beautifully. There's absolutely no reason it shouldn't. Ideally, if I could write the script, I like to meet people at least once and then go virtual from there, but that's not always possible. So it's not really a barrier except in our own minds. So as long as you can agree the technology, the conversation you have, if possible, I would say have a video call rather than just an audio call. It helps to build a relationship. And for everything else, excuse me, I think it remains the same. It's the same parameters, the same agreement. Everything is the same except it's virtual. It's not in person. But there's no reason it shouldn't be successful.
Yeah, I think I would like to again, personally vouch for this. I have now a mentor, distinguished Toastmaster Morag has been mentoring me for some time, and it's very simple. It's about the amount of commitment and passion you have in that relationship and what you are ready to put into it. Because if you don't take out time and you don't engage in a frequent, conversation and a frequent dialogue through whatever means you can, you will not have a relationship. And that's true even if it's you're physically close to the person, but then if you don't take out time to discuss things, it will not work. So it becomes a little difficult, but then it's not impossible, and it is working fine for me. So I don't think there is anything different in that. So Aleta, I think we've had a fairly detailed question answer session. Thank you to you for taking your time, your valuable time, and sharing all these insights. Now we'll go to the last slide, which is of course the most important slide, and then you can just explain what is the challenge and how would we want people to take this forward. Yes.
Okay, so this is a 6-week mentoring challenge. 6 weeks for you to activate or relaunch mentoring in your club. You'll be emailed a toolkit which has all the documentation and support and resources that you need. So my suggestion is that you get that printed out first and shared with your ex-com so that you're all familiar with it. You introduce it to your club. As I said earlier on, you're welcome to use this presentation at your club meeting and get buy-in from everybody. And immediately introduce a mentor moment at your meetings. If you've never done mentoring before, get someone at that mentor moment to share mentoring they've had outside of Toastmasters. Your PQD, Nelson, has a dedicated team to answer your questions, and they'll be sharing with you a contact email, so any questions you have can be answered. And then in 6 weeks' time, we'd love you to join another webinar where we have a report back session, where you share your challenges, you share your success stories, and we decide what the next steps are. So we thought this would be a brilliant idea to get everyone to take action. And I'm sure that your district public relations manager will be sharing some success stories and progress and sharing which clubs are taking part in the mentoring challenge. So we want to get as many people involved in this as possible so that we all support and help one another in the next 6 weeks so that we can make a difference in our members' lives.
Just to add to what Aleta just said, this mentoring toolkit has already been uploaded in the District 105 website. So whoever has registered for this mentoring webinar will be getting this toolkit link. So you can go on to the website and it is available in the resources. All the documents are there, and you have a lot of very useful material there, which you can put to use immediately and create the mentoring culture in your clubs. So we will be doing that, and as she said, you are feel free to please ask more questions. Should we go to your last slide? I think you have one more slide.
Yes, I think it's a repeat of what I'm saying. It's just slightly different format. It's a 6-week challenge. Get your club going. Use the toolkit. Add a mentor moment. You've got all the support you need, and we want to see you in 6 weeks' time sharing your successes and your challenges and just the wonderful experience that comes from taking on a challenge like this.
Thank you so much, DTM Alleta, for sharing all these wonderful ideas. And I think also thank you to all the webinar participants for being very active and asking some very pertinent questions, some questions which have shed light into this very important aspect of Toastmasters. And as we said, we will have a follow-up webinar. We will be sharing the dates. It will be sometime in the third week of March. We will share the dates and we will send you the links for it. But we also want you to do something before that so that you can share some of your things that you've done and challenges you're facing further. So this will be a follow-up webinar where we can fine-tune what you have been doing and how we can take it forward. Please share with some of the other members of the clubs who are possibly not been able to be part of this session. We will also be sending a link of the recording, so please feel free to go through it, and we'll try and also send you the compiled questions. May not be the answers, you'll have to listen into the webinar to get the answers, but we will share the questions. So if it gets you interested, you can please listen to the webinar. So I would like to thank some of the others who are there in the panel who couldn't be brought on. Distinguished Toastmaster Nelson is very much there in the panel. So good evening to you and thank you for being in the panel. Distinguished Toastmaster Balaji, Distinguished Toastmaster Gurbinder, and all the other members, thank you so much for being there. And thank you, Alleta. We will be seeing you shortly. We will be having a follow-up webinar on this, so we will catch up then. So thank you to all of you, and good night.
Thank you, everyone. Happy Valentine's Day.
Thank you so much. Good night.
Good night.